Are you ready?
Yes, I think let's try.
First of all, I'd like to ask you about your visit, including the key outcomes of the meetings you've held.
Right. I have had a very productive of 3 days in Maldives this time. This is my second visit, after 14 months. So the purpose of my visit is, first of all, really to understand, the recent developments, right? What have happened, what are the changes that have taken place, and secondly, to interact with senior government officials to understand, the development challenges the country faces. So I think I have had very good discussions with different ministries, ministers. And also thirdly, the purpose of my visit is to, try to work with the government, okay, to establish a new relationship, right? A relationship of equal partnership moving forward. So these are, this purpose, and I think I've achieved all of these goals.
My next question is, you have attended a conference on the new penal code. What is the UN's assessment of the readiness or ability of the institutions to implement the new penal code?
Right. I think the penal code is a very important piece of legislation in any country, right? And in Maldives, the process to develop the penal code started almost 10 years ago, right? It took many years now, right, with successive governments. And the changes that are proposed are quite important. It is moving away from some of the established practices that have been in place for 3 decades. So it has taken some time, for the rollout, to take place, to happen, okay, for the new legal, to the penal code to be implemented. Now, what has happened is that the Ministry of Attorney General, right, and the NDP have worked together to establish a legal resource center, a training center. Okay. It's called the Legal Sector Resource Center, right, to provide the trainings, okay, to all actors that are involved in the penal code implementation, right. Justice sector, and you have many players, right? Lawyers, government officials, right, and I think Commonwealth is also undertaking steps for training of judicial actors, right. So over the recent months, the legal sector resource center have trained over 1,000 people who will be involved in the implementation of this implementing of the code, right. So I think, in my view, I think the time is ready. The time, the institutions, in my view, have adequate capacity for the implementation of the penal code. And recently, this weekend, right, this Saturday, I think, there was a conference, right, to take stock of what has been done, what more needs to be done for the rollout. So I think, by and large, the institutions are ready.
The UNDP's democratic governance program focuses on diffusing tensions and fostering dialogue. But Maldives remains a highly polarized society, and citizens are often led to believe democracy is just a struggle for power. What should political leaders do to restore the people's faith in them?
Okay. I think, in my view, okay, I think we would all agree that democracy is not about power. Democracy is about accountability, ultimately, okay, right? And whoever is in power, whichever political leaders, are in power, I think, we all need to be accountable to the people's interest, right? Because people elected political parties. The parties have to be responsible to the people. I think in the democracy, okay, as we see in many countries, you have a vote, right? You have a winning party, you have a losing party, right? But very often the losing party also commands a large amount of votes, right? So the question is, for the winning party, what do you do about the voices of the losing party as well, right? So in a way, it will require the winning party to reach out, right, to all the population, because the government, once elected, represents all people, not just the supporters, right? So I think what we needed to do is to really have people's interest in mind, okay, have the country's development objectives in mind, and focus on issues, okay, focus on development challenges, not focusing on political struggle, because the struggle is over, in my view, once the election is over, right? So ideally, I think all parties should accept the outcome, but work on issues, okay? There are imperfections, right? And if you look at established countries, right, countries that have a long history of democracy, there are always problems, right, in their governance structure and systems. Maldives is only 6 years old, right? The democracy of Maldives is only 6 years old. It's only normal that you have all kinds of problems, right? So I guess the key is, again, focus on issues, right? What are the issues, right? There's so many development challenges in this country, right, that needs everybody's attention, the government, the parliament, the judiciary, right? For example, the issue of drug use, I heard, right, is a problem, right? So let's focus on this issue. How can we solve this problem, right? And if you involve young people in this process, right, you involve different actors in this process. So the energy is focused on this real issue. Right? You have also solid waste management, right, in small islands. This is a real issue. People, worry about this issue because these issues affect their quality of life, affect their future, right? So if somehow we can have a dialogue, we can have a discussion about this kind of development challenges that affecting people's lives, and I think we can actually move forward more effectively, right? So just as some examples.
Currently, there are concerns about key democratic principles and values, including separation of power, good governance, transparency, judicial independence, and even freedom of expression. Is Mali still moving forward in its democratic transition?
Yeah, I think Maldives has had a democratic system, right, since its constitutional reform in 2008, right, for 6-7 years now, right. It has made tremendous progress. There's no doubt about it. Okay, and within a short period of time, you have established all the institutions, right. You have built up a lot of capacity, right, in different institutions, right, government, judiciary, parliament, right, and I think these organs are functioning. Right. Now, the question now is, what can we do to improve the efficiency of different systems, right? In judiciary, for example, there's a backlog of cases, for example, right? And for everyone, for individual, a case delayed is justice denied from their point of view, right? So judiciary is working on a system, right, to speed things up. We're working with judiciary on a legal training center, right, whose purpose is to train legal professionals to do their job better. So we're working with judiciary on these kind of issues, right? With Majlis, for example, we're also engaging with Majlis to develop their strategic plan, right, of work, and to build the capacity of parliamentary staff, right? But also to provide relevant trainings for parliamentarians, right, to discharge their duties, right, to be responsive to their constituencies. Then with governments, we're working with many institutions, right, with Attorney General's office, right. We're working with other ministries, on different issues that have implication for democracy, right. The legislations that we do, right, in different areas, for example, are all very important, for the democratic progress of the country. So, we're also working with the Human Rights Commission, for example, right? we work with them to develop the capacity, right, to discharge their duties as a Human Rights Commission. So I guess what I want to say is that the democracy in Maldives is thriving, right? But it also needs a lot of care, right? One of the questions I have discussed with several senior officials is, now we have experimented with democratic system for 6-7 years, right? We have accumulated experience, right? We have seen the challenges, right? We can see the protests in the streets, right? We see the challenges, how much energy has been, diverted, right, from development, right? So we have all these good experiences, challenging experiences. Maybe it's time to sit back and have a look at, how we have fared, right? Maybe we should look at, whether we, should continue with the existing structure, the institutions, or whether we can impassionately review this objectively, right? Look at the efficiency, and to see what we can do to improve the institutional structure, for example, right? So there are a lot of things we can do. There's an example of this local council, right? Decentralization issue, right? People have very different views about how the decentralized system has worked or not worked, right? So again, if the leaders, have a desire to review, how this system has worked, we'll be very happy to engage, right? From technical point of view, to support this kind of review, right? So I think the goal for everybody should be to look at things objectively, to move forward. I think that's what I would like to say. Yeah.
Now, Maldives is classified as an upper middle income country, and yet economic and social disparities are widening, especially between Malé and the atolls. What is the best way that Maldives can achieve equal services and development for everyone?
Disparity, inequality have been a phenomenon to almost all countries, okay, which have achieved rapid development recently, right? For Maldives, we published a human development report last year, which focused on the question of inequality in Maldives. It looked at the root causes, right, and also offered some solutions. Right? And Maldives is a very unique country, right? And it has more than 190 inhabited islands, right? So the spatial, dispersion, right, is one of the root causes of inequality, right? Because service delivery would be very different in Malé and in outer islands, right? So just depends on where you're born, you are disadvantaged. You can be disadvantaged, right? So we have statistics to say that if you are born in Malé, you will likely have at least 3 years more education than if you're born in outer islands, right? And your income, the chance of high income is also better in Malé and than in other islands. The income disparity actually on average can be 1.5 times, right? It's significant, right? So, so what can be done? Right? I think first of all, you have to ensure economic growth, right? Growth, because without growth, you won't have a budget to support all other investment and development projects, right? Social programs. This is one. We have to make sure that the economy is strong, right? The tourism sector, continues to develop, but also diversify the economy. Right? The government has come up with a number of policies and programs, right? Including special economic zones, for example, right? Fishery, agriculture, investment to make the economy grow. Right? The second one then is really a redistributive policy, right? That includes the social protection, right? You have now very good government programs in health education, right, and also health insurance, right? You have it's quite a lot of subsidies, in different fields, okay, including energy and so forth, right? So now this is a redistributive health, redistributive measures, right, to make sure that people in outer islands, right, receive basic levels of support and services, right? Because the quality of life is measured not only by income. That's one thing that we emphasize a lot. Progress and development cannot only be measured by income alone. You have to look at other aspects that are important to one's development. Right? So if the government is providing services, okay, to a good extent, then your need for income actually is reduced, right? So you need to look at this, from different angles, not only from the income point of view. So this is a redistributive issue, right? And then another issue, okay, which we don't talk about a lot, or have not talked a lot about, is participation, right? People's voices, right? Because development, is about sort of participation in decision making as well, right? So that's what democracy is about, right? But your voice is not only should not only be exercised at the time of vote. People should have a say for other decisions, right? In between elections, right? So if, for example, you come up with a policy that will affect the people's lives, say health insurance, right? You might want to hear what people say about it, right? So that your decision making can be more relevant to people's needs, right? But having a say is not automatically linked to, politics, right? It is about everything, right? That affects people's lives. So these are many aspects that you can do, to change the discussion. And it's not only really about political issues, but really focus on this kind of development issues. So, anyway, I don't know if I answered your questions. But, right.
The UNDP has been a long-time partner of Maldives in climate change and environmental management, and yet MDG 7 remains unachieved and with slow progress. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, I think the challenge for Maldives is in environmental sustainability. Is, for example, drinking water, right? Access to drinking water, and beach erosion, soil erosions, right? So these are very unique challenges for Maldives. Okay? Maldives, first of all, has done very well in MDG achievements. Okay. Maldives has achieved 5 of the most important major MDGs ahead of the time, right? Maternal child mortality, right? HIV/AIDS, you have also poverty and hunger, right? You have achieved these goals, okay, ahead of the time, right? What's lacking is some aspects of environmental sustainability and gender empowerment. Right. So these are 2 areas where you're lacking. So you have done very well overall. That's the first thing, very important. Right? But in terms of the environmental challenges, it's a very complex issue. Again, your small island setting, is adding to the difficulties. Right? And so for drinking water, for example, right? If you have desalination, okay, you have to have a fairly high recurrent cost, right? Investment cost and recurrent cost, right? If you have a water collection rainwater collection system, for example, and then this system works well in some locations, doesn't work in some other locations, right? Now government actually is looking at a combined system, okay, of desalination plus rainwater collection, okay, and then using pipes, right, to pipe water to households, right? So government is making an effort, and we're working with the government in these ventures. So, and I think we needed to just recognize the challenges. Okay, you have, as I mentioned, more than 190 inhabited islands, right? So to address the needs of people in drinking water, in environmental sustainability, I think is a continuous effort, essentially. Now, what's important is that, yes, there are some unfinished business of MDGs, okay? But this year, the UN member states are discussing the post-2015 agenda and the Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs. Right? So we should now have a forward-looking plan for the implementation of SDGs. We don't stop, when MDGs stop. Right? We start, with new objectives. So maybe, again, in this regard, we can have some consultations, right, to get people interested in the development goals for the next 15 years. Right?
One of the critical challenges for Maldives is high levels of youth unemployment. What would you recommend to overcome this issue?
Yeah, based on my limited readings of the discussions, youth unemployment is an issue. Right? The overall employment is low, but if you look at youth, then it's double digit. Right? So, and I understand it's very complex, question. It's not only about availability of jobs. In terms of availability of jobs, I think economic diversification, right, and is a source of jobs, probably, right. Then we also needed to look at the types of jobs, right. Young people are very good at technology, for example, right. Can we use technology as a source of jobs, right? But in this regard, then we have to look at really, are we competing with India, right, which is very strong in technology jobs, right? So if we want to develop these jobs, and we have to find a niche, right? So, but technology is a potential source of job, and then small and medium enterprises, worldwide speaking, okay, is normally a source of job growth. Right? What you need is entrepreneurship, right, and some funding and training, okay, so that you can develop your own business. Right? I think for Maldives, you have to look at your strong economic sectors and try to create linkages to these sectors. Okay? If it's tourism, for example, right? What small and medium enterprises, that can potentially be set up to be suppliers of these resorts, for example, right? If you find a niche, I think there's a lot of potential for jobs. One, for example, handicrafts. Right? If you go to tourist resorts, a lot of handicrafts are imported, for example. Right? And people come to Maldives, they want to buy Maldivian-made, handicrafts, right? So you have some atolls which are very good at, handicrafts, high quality, like, decorative products, right? So why don't we make more of this, right? For example, if young people want to find a job, I think the government now has supportive policies, right? And we can also support. We are involved in supporting SMEs, right? And many other multilateral agencies are supporting SMEs. So we can do something about young people's jobs. Okay. I think I've heard that some young people prefer not to have jobs because they feel comfortable, right, with the state subsidy, right, that the families are getting, right. So now the question is a motivation, right? How do we motivate young people, right, who are able to work, to actually have a gainful employment, right? Because they can rely on their parents, they can still live well, right? So, so what can we do about it, right? So during my visit, I've talked about really thinking out of box, use innovation, right, to find a solution. In this case, for example, let's talk to young people, right, who can work but don't want to work, right? So let's talk to some of them, right? Let's put them together in a room. Let's different people. Let's have a dialogue. Say, why is the situation, right? In their view, okay, what can be done so that they're actually willing to find gainful employment, right? What kind of jobs they want? what kind of training or support they want from the government, right? So let's have honest dialogues, right? So that we come up with some ideas. So the question of young people's employment is not straightforward, right, in the Maldives context. But I feel that if everybody is focusing on these kind of issues, and we can find the solutions. It may take time, but one job at a time, this can be done. It can be done.
Maldives' transition to a middle-income country was recent. What impact has this had on the country's development, and how has the UN's role changed?
I think Maldives, has developed very, very steadily, and quite rapidly in the last 10 years. Right? Your GDP per capita now is almost $6,000, I think, and your human development ranking puts you at around 104, actually, right, out of 189 countries. Right? So it's a good state of development, generally speaking, compared to many developing countries. Your Human Development Index, for example, is higher than the average for South Asian countries. Right? So you have achieved a good level of development. But despite being a middle-income country, you have many development challenges. Right? We talked about some of this. The youth unemployment, right, is one issue. Right? The solid waste management in islands. Right? Your vulnerability to climate change is a huge issue, right? And the governance, the growing pains of democracy, for example, right? There are a lot of challenges, right? So being a middle-income country doesn't mean development is done, right? You actually have more difficult development challenges to deal with, right? Now, not being a least developed country, right, and being a middle-income country, meaning that you lost a lot of privileges and benefits, right, in trade and in investment, right? But at the same time, the nature of development is changing, right? What I see is that you have quite, a number of bigger investments that were not there before, right? Because of the state of development, Maldives has become more attractive for investment, right? So you have expansion of airport, for example, right? You have now special economic zones, right, where I understand that Dubai World, right, is coming to invest, right. You have the bridge between Mali and Hulu Mali, right. That Hulule.
Yeah.
That's airport, right?
Yeah.
Okay. That will be beautiful. Now these are mega projects, right, that will transform the economy of the country, I believe, right. And so being middle income, I think, means that the country has different capacity. The nature of development will transform. Okay? I just read the economic data. Okay? The tourist arrivals in February is 120,000, for example. Right? So that means at this rate, you will have at least 1.4 million arrivals. So this is very, very high, and it's the highest, for that month, right? So, the growth prospects, I think, is good. Okay? Now, what does this mean for us, right? For UN, okay? For our development cooperation with Maldives? Now, that impact is huge, right? Because of the income level, okay, and because of the small size of the population of Maldives, which determines, how we allocate resources, right? So now we practically cannot allocate any meaningful resources for Maldives. Okay? So our core contribution to Maldives is negligible. Right? At this time, we spend about, on average, $7-8 million a year in Maldives. But this money financially is not important to Maldives, not significant to your economy, okay? Even to your government budget. Overall, it's not significant. Right? So this is one of the major questions I'm discussing with government leaders. Okay, that is to say, please don't see us as source of funding. Please don't see UNDP as a donor. Okay, we are a development partner to you, right? We are an equal partner. Right? So our objective is to add value, right, to this partnership. We cannot provide funding, right, as our strengths. Okay? but we can provide a lot of other things as our strengths, our comparative advantages. We're impartial. UN development program focus on development issues, socio-economic, right, environment, right? So we're impartial. Although what we do may have a political implications, like governance issues, right? And but our objective is the country's development. This is one. We can bring a lot of experts, right, from different countries, different parts of the world, and from UNDP itself, to bring relevant experiences for Maldives. Right? If you want to develop a solid waste management policy, which the Ministry of Environment is working on now, right? We can bring a lot of innovative practices from other countries to contribute to this work that the Ministry of Environment is doing, right? So this is our competitive advantage. And we can do a lot. We have the trust of the government, generally speaking, across the world. Okay, the government trusts us, right? So we can, work on sensitive issues like human rights, right? I met a foreign minister just now. We talked about human rights issues, right? So we can work on these kind of issues. So we have a lot of things we can do, right? But don't see us as donor. That's the key, okay? So for Maldives as a middle-income country, that's the implication for our relationship. Right? I also said to the ministers that, in fact, okay, not only you should not see us as donor, you should actually co-financing our joint programs. Right? Because Maldives can do that. Right? I gave example that in Pakistan, for example, we approved a program of $11 million recently. The government of Pakistan contributed $4.6 million as a co-financing for civil service reform. Indian government is providing tens of millions of dollars to UNDP as government support, right, for us to deliver services, development services to Indian government. Right? So they see us as a spending unit of the Indian government, right? Because they said, okay, we have funding. Funding is not a problem, right? But we have challenges in achieving some development goals. Can you help us, right, to deliver some service for us to do that? Right? In Bangladesh, government is providing co-financing for an urban poverty reduction program. Right? We work on the first phase. It achieved good results. The government wants us to expand it to the entire urban slum population. So they are co-financing the activity. Right? So Maldives, being a much richer country, right, in many ways, okay, can do that. The challenge is for us to prove to the government, to all parties in Maldives, that our value added is worth their co-financing, right? So it's we have to change the relationship, change the mentality, right? And we can do a lot of things together. I'm very confident. We can bring innovation to developing the Maldives. We can engage young people in the process, and we can do good prototype of innovative ideas, and the government can use their funding to scale that up across the country. So I'm very positive generally.
My last question.
Sure, please.
What will the post-2015 development agenda mean for Maldives?
Right. No, I think I touched on this question earlier, right? As unfinished business of MDGs. I think SDGs, okay, the post-2015 development agenda and the sustainable development goals, right, will be there for the next 15 years, right? And I think it comes at a very important time and a very good time for Maldives. Now, the Ministry of Finance is developing economic development strategy, right? And that strategy is to translate the party manifesto, right, into concrete development programs and strategies, right? So in my discussion with the Minister of Finance, I said that let's use post-2015 agenda, okay, and the SDGs as an opportunity, right? And let's reflect this new universal development agenda in your economic development goals, okay, development strategy, right? So that it not only reflects the important elements of the party manifesto, but also reflect the principles of sustainable, inclusive, and resilient development. Right. So in that context, the post-2015 development agenda has a lot of relevance for Maldives. The SDGs, has goals that are relevant, very, very relevant for Maldives. Right? It has a goal, for example, on on climate change, right? Climate change adaptation, water resource management, equitable growth, and also on oceans. Okay? There's another goal on governance. For the first time, there's a goal on good governance, responsive government. Right? So all these issues are very relevant for Maldives. Right? So we can really use this as an opportunity to do, in my view, longer term, medium term planning, so that working together, we have Maldives where people find fulfillment, right, in life. That's really the objective for everyone, right? Okay.
Okay, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. I hope it's useful. Okay.